forget. Short-term memory. I don't remember how we started last time. Did I just start? Okay. Old age. There were two things that I needed to clarify and correct from last time, and then two quotes that Rinpoche wanted me to explain. So I'll do that before we get to the questions. The first one was about, remember I mentioned the ripening path and the ripening aspect and the, ripening path and liberated path. It was not referring to on the path of seeing. What it was referring to is the ripening path is the path of building up merit or positive force. So the meditations on love, compassion, all of these sort of things that are within the sphere of the so-called collection of merit. And the liberating path is the one which is dealing with voidness. So the collection, or however you want to translate it, of deep awareness, of voidness. And it's that which actually brings you to liberation in connection with the path, the buildup of positive force. The positive force by itself is not enough. And we are drawn to doing the relatively easier practices of love and peace, that whole thing, but not drawn to the practice of voidness, an understanding of voidness. So that was the reference of that. I got that wrong. And the other thing that was not so clear yesterday was about the definition of ignorance in the Dharmakirti's work. And there, Rinpoche cleared that up. It has several meanings, is the complication there. There is the general meaning of ignorance, which is like the previous, prior meaning as well, which is the mental factor that stupefies the mind, that makes it not able to understand. It is what, when a contrary thing, view or contrary perception and so on is arising, that it prevents having the right one, that type of thing. So that's general. It can be with conceptual or non-conceptual minds. But when it says that it is the synonym of moha, the Sanskrit word, naivety, which is one of the three poisons, Rinpoche said that actually is used for not understanding, what blocks you from understanding anything, mathematics or whatever, whereas the actual ignorance, this anti-knowing type of factor, is just specifically about knowing reality. Now, there are subtypes of ignorance, and that gets into those with a view. And those with a view, the main one is this jigta, the deluded view toward the perishing aggregates. That's where, and that has to do only with the selflessness of the, not understanding the selflessness of a person, referring only to oneself. So thinking of the aggregates, your own aggregates, as being either identical with me or the, possession me as mine. And in the Prasangika way of, the non-Prasangika systems say that it's aimed at the aggregates themselves. Prasangikas say it's aimed at the self, the conventional self, that this is, solidly me. And anyway, it gets a little bit more complicated. No need to go into all the details. But there are other what should we call them, disturbing attitudes or whatever, with a view that are also ignorance. So this is like a misknowing of things, and that would be grasping for the a self of persons who are other than ourselves, and grasping for the true existence of phenomenon. So those are with a view, but they are not. They are also called ignorance, but they are not this, deluded view toward the perishing aggregates. Now, in many texts, though, in many presentations, when it talks about ignorance, it says it is identical with the just that view of the the deluded view toward the perishing aggregates. So then you have to understand that that doesn't mean that all of ignorance is like that. It's just calling a part by the name of the whole thing. The example of that in our English language is calling the Thanksgiving dinner a turkey dinner. There are more. Turkey is just part of it. So that was what had to be corrected from yesterday. Now about the quotes. I have it here, 1 second. Okay, we have the Buddhapala quote. It starts, the darkness of naivety obscures the eyes of intelligence of unlearned persons. So, remember, I mentioned that Dharmakirti, that Buddhapala lived before Dharmakirti, and so he uses the definition that ignorance, which here is in the system before Dharmakirti, is a synonym for naivety, that it merely blinds the mind, so it makes darkness. So that's why it says the darkness of naivety, that's the darkness of ignorance, obscures the eyes of intelligence of unlearned persons. Intelligence is a synonym for discriminating awareness, what's often translated as wisdom, but that's, again, a very vague word in English. Discriminating awareness is what sets out choices, and within the choices of, reality or not reality, destructive or constructive, then chooses, and can choose either, so it discriminates between the choices and can either choose correctly or incorrectly. So that's this mental factor, and this is a synonym for it is intelligence. So the darkness and naivety obscures the eyes of intelligence of unlearned persons, and when they conceptualize functional phenomenon as existing by the power of their essential natures, the essential nature is, things have an essential nature of what they are. This is, conventionally, this is a table, this is a cup. But when our mind is obscured, then we conceptualize that or imagine that functional phenomenon, things that perform a function, impermanent phenomenon, that what establishes their existence is the power of these essential natures, that the essential nature of being a cup makes it, a cup, establishes that it's a cup. And This causes them to develop attachment and anger. My cup, don't use it. You used it. You get angry with them. However, when the lamp of knowing, so that's the opposite of this darkness, when the lamp of knowing, dependent arising, illuminates the darkness of naivety, and with the eyes of discriminating knowing, that's this discriminating awareness, they see the non-existence of the existence of functional phenomenon being by the power of their essential natures. They see that that's garbage, that doesn't refer to anything real. Then in a state of non-abiding, so non-abiding, not staying in this misconception, their attachment and anger no longer arise. So that was the quote that comes from the commentary that Rinpoche is using, and he said this is a very important one to understand. The other thing that Rinpoche wanted me to explain was about the subtle and gross levels of dependent arising on causes and conditions and dependent arising on mental labeling. This also is important to understand, and it was gone over fairly quickly in class. So, dependent arising, has many meanings. There's the meaning in the 12 links of dependent arising in terms of rebirth. There's dependent arising on cause and conditions. There's dependent arising on parts. There's relative dependent arising, cold and hot are relative to each other, long and short. So that's another type of dependent arising. And there's dependent arising in terms of conceptual labeling, what establishes things, what we discussed yesterday. So in terms of cause and effect, that type of dependent arising, the gross dependent arising is functional phenomenon, things that perform a function, arise from causes and conditions, and produce an effect. So that's the gross level. The subtle, that's the, this is the gross level, and the correct view of that is that there are functional phenomenon, and the incorrect view would be that these are static, and there are static phenomenon that are not, do not arise by causes and conditions, don't change from moment to moment, like these categories, voidness itself, space is the absence of anything that tangible that would prevent something from occupying 3 dimensions. So it's a characteristic of a phenomenon that no matter where you move it, it can occupy 3 dimensions. There's nothing preventing that. And so anyway, that's space. So the subtle level of impermanence, this is the one that is tricky. This is talking about how things, general, when we speak about subtle impermanence, that is that everything changes from moment to moment, and that it is, for some of them, things are gradually going toward its gross impermanence when it will end. There are things like the mental continuum that don't degenerate, don't come to an end, but change from moment to moment. So there are 2 types of this type of phenomenon. So when things are changing from moment to moment, like Rinpoche used the example of the stream, that the essential nature of what it is, water, seems to provide the continuity, that in each moment it's the same. Or I use the example of looking at pictures of ourselves throughout our life, that this seems to remain the same. So that's the misconception what's called subtle permanence that we imagine that is providing the continuity in terms of the moment-to-moment change of things. So what Rinpoche didn't go into, he did, refer to it in a previous teaching, is what does provide the continuity is, I don't know if you've come across this in, the teachings here, what's called a shikpa. And have you had that? You've heard of that? The shikpa is, how do you translate it? It's a terrible word to translate. There is no way in English to translate it nicely. Having ceased. Yeah, I use having perished. But it's the same thing. It's the past tense. In each moment, the present tense of the verb is that it ceases or it perishes, and it perishes and arises simultaneously. It's not that first it ends and then there is an interval and then it arises. So this is the past tense. And the past tense of the having perished or having ceased of something, each moment, and that is, and it's synonymous with the no longer happening. When we talk about the 3 times in Buddhism, it's not the Western idea of past, present, and future. Don't think that it's equivalent. It's not. It is the not yet happening of September 1st, the presently happening of September 1st, and then the no longer happening of it. And so this having perished is equivalent to the no longer happening of something. So that no longer happening of each moment allows for the continuity, the arising of the next moment. So that is the explanation of how you account for continuity, not in terms of something, an affirmative phenomenon like the essential nature, but what is always preferred is with the negation phenomenon, having perished, no longer happening. This type of thing, so you can't actually pinpoint it. You look very puzzled. It's non-affirming. It's a non-affirming. No, it's an affirming one because it affirms the arising of the next moment. The negation is of the previous moment, and what leaves in its footprint is that there will be a next, continuity, a next moment, an arising. So this is what is referred to as subtle impermanence, and in order to understand that, Rinpoche was saying you need to understand the conceptual labeling in order to refute that the essential nature, even though the essential nature of being water or being me, an individual remains the same in each moment, it doesn't, establish it, truly as being me or truly as being the water. That's why you have to understand the voidness of, in terms of conceptual labeling, in order to understand that the point about subtle impermanence. Okay? No. No, there is an essential nature of being water or being me in each moment, and it does remain the same, but it is not, it is not static because each moment, it changes from moment to moment, the actual what it is stays the same, but it itself changes from moment to moment, but it doesn't have the power to establish that, it exists, from its own side as water or stuff like, anything like that. But the illusion of it is that it's permanent because it's always the same. I mean, it's the same essential nature. So that's subtle permanence. That is wrong. That's false. Okay?
So when the having ceases, or having ceased, and then the essential nature is recreated, is it that it having ceased, and then you have the new set of causes and conditions that are arising in that moment that are then creating the next moment of the essential nature?
Well, each moment is going to be affected by causes and conditions. That's one, that's on the gross level. It's going to be affected by causes and conditions. So each moment changes, from moment to moment. The essential nature remains the same, but you have to say in each moment also, it's replaced by the next moment. But what you want to avoid is saying that what establishes the continuity is something which is an affirming phenomenon, an affirmation phenomenon, that then becomes, you imagine that it's a thing and has the power to establish it. So what you replace that with is this having perished. That's a negation phenomenon. So it's, of course, you could grasp to that as being a thing, but it is the preferred way of explaining continuity. Okay? So then in terms of dependent arising, put it that way, because it's not exactly conceptual labeling, but arising, on in terms of a basis, I think is more appropriate here. That the gross level has to do with what I was explaining yesterday as objectively, something is tied to something else. And to know it, you have to know what it's tied to. So this is referring to several types of this. There are those things that first you have to, it's tied to a basis like a person or age or voidness for that matter. And it is, to know it, you have to know the basis first, and then in the case of age or persons and so on, both the persons and the age, the persons and the aggregates, or the age and whatever, item it is, simultaneously. In the lower schools, Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, it's the same for selflessness, but starting with Chittamatra and Madhyamaka, they say voidness is an exception. So you have to know the basis. If you're going to meditate on voidness, first you have to have the basis and the object to be refuted, and then you refute it, and then you have, the understanding of voidness without the basis appearing. So this is a special case that is described, but you have to have the basis first. You can't just go into voidness. You have to refute, get rid of the object to be refuted. So that's one type of, being tied to a basis. There are other things that you don't have to know the basis first, but have simultaneously, like the whole and parts, or words and the meaning of words, or category and a member of category. So these things are, another type of this gross arising dependent on a basis, that you have to know the basis. simultaneously or before, etc. And there are things which you don't have to have that. And this is not on the sophisticated level of mental labeling. This is on the level of to see, the table. I don't have to see anything else before. I just see the table. It doesn't, it's this what's called self-sufficiently existent or self-sufficiently knowable. Okay, that's the gross level. The subtle level has to do with what we were talking about yesterday of conceptual labeling. So that this is saying that in order to establish that there is such a thing as a cell phone, that there needs to be the concept or idea or category of a cell phone that is a convention, and that category, there's a member of that category, so that's the referent object. The dakche, if somebody wanted the Tibetan of these terms. So that is the correct understanding, and it is on the basis of an imaginary form that is, in this case, I think of it, well, I only, can imagine the front of it, not both sides. So, a mental image of the front of it. So that is the basis, and that's the dakshi, the basis of the mental labeling. So it's in conjunction that is, conceptually labeled. So the member of that, the generic thing, let's say a dog, is then mentally labeled on my representation of, what I think of as the ideal dog, or friend is perhaps an even better example of a good friend. So we have this concept, and then, of course, we project it onto, persons, and then they don't live up to our projection, and we get angry with them, and all of that. That was what I was referring to as a referent thing. That is what we, that is, if believing inherent existence, that self-established existence, that, what makes it exist. Rinpoche was saying that the self-nature is actually just voidness, is what allows things to function. The self-nature allows things to conventionally exist. But we make it into a thing, a self-establishing nature. Now, there's something there that then, out there, there's the actual thing that's holding it up, holding up our imaginary form. It's like a prop in a scenery in a drama. That there's something out there that's holding up what we imagine. So, what is the incorrect view is that there is a defining characteristic on the side of the category, and the member of the category, this generic member of the category, that is found on the side of the basis for labeling. So there isn't. That is, it's merely, what establishes that there is, a cell phone. Well, there's the concept of cell phone, and it refers to something that functions. And that's it. There's nothing inside this that, when a dog looks at it, well, the dog is looking at the cell phone. Well, not from the dog's point of view, isn't it? So there's nothing on the side of this object that's making it a cell phone. So we have a concept of a cell phone. Therefore, we see it as a cell phone. You get the idea? I mean, it really is not that complicated. And the practical application, as someone asked, is, you have a problem. Okay, well, that's just a conventional way of referring to it. But don't make it into a thing. And then, you have a drama all around it. And project onto it, I can't handle it, why is it happening to me? And you don't deal with it. So that's the application. So this is what Rinpoche wanted me to explain, that, that it is clear, since this is the, one of the important takeaways from this teaching. So now we can have questions. You have one in the back.
Yeah, this was a question relating to what you just said. So
Can you speak closer into the mic?
yeah, is this better?
Yes?
So I think so. What you mentioned was that for us to label a cell phone as a cell phone,
For both what?
to label a cell phone
Yes?
as a cell phone,
Yes.
it's not necessary that the defining characteristic is present in it for
Right.
us to label it as such.
Right.
But my confusion was, how can people communicate in an intelligent way with each other about cell phones if there wasn't some characteristic that defined it? So
Okay, so this is the why you need to be very, very precise with the terminology. There is a defining characteristic of this object. All objects have defining characteristics that distinguish it from something else, that distinguish it from, this is the aggregate of distinguishing, sometimes called recognition, but that implies you knew it already, and now you recognize it again. So that's not a good translation of it. It is distinguish. You distinguish something from what it's not. So in the broadest sense, that all I see in my field of vision are, depending on the author, either colored shapes or pixels, colored pixels. So I have to put those colored shapes into actual objects. Now, I can put the colored shapes, into very strange combinations of colored shapes. So the fact that there are defining characteristics allows for us to distinguish one object from another object. Otherwise, perception wouldn't work at all. So it's a very basic function that, insects have as well. I mean, it's very important when we look at the definition of these aggregates to consider that the insects have this. So they have to be explained in a way that, is relevant for them. So there is a defining characteristic, but that defining characteristic doesn't have the power to make it this object. It's a convention. Now what does convention mean? Then we bring it back to the easier examples of love and like. Well, there's just we all have feelings, so they function. But how do you describe them? How do you define them? I mean, how do you understand them? So some people long ago got together and they made up words and made up definitions of them and put them in dictionaries. And they taught it to people, and people learned them. That's how they arose. So it's a convention. That was why, when the Rinpoche was saying that the self-nature of voidness, that's not dependent on anything. Voidness is a static phenomenon. It's not created by anyone. It's not affected by, causes and conditions. It's always the case. It's a fact. That's a way of looking at it that is easy to digest. It's a fact, period. But the defining characteristic, that's a convention that people made up for anything. But it's not on the side of the object, already there, that's making it what it is. You see the difference? It's very subtle, but very profound, actually. What makes this person a good friend? Well, it's my concept of a good friend, isn't it? And an easier word for category or concept is an idea. I have an idea of what a good friend is. Okay. Next.
Hello.
Yeah, we can alternate sides of the room. That's sort of...
So this would hold also that the Buddha is conceptually labeled and
Conceptually labeled as a Buddha.
as a Buddha.
Yeah.
And for example, Rinpoche's conceptually labeled as a teacher.
Mm-hmm.
So does that imply that there's some kind of intelligence on this side that?
What do you mean this side? Your side?
Not-
Our
my-
side as students?
Yeah, not the basis that knows that's recognizes wisdom and the Buddha's teachings, or
I don't understand your question. I'm sorry.
well, we're receiving. Well, let's say it's a Buddha. The wisdom of a Buddha, or say dependent arising, and the wisdom of the Dharmakaya, or
Yeah.
so we're conceptually labeling maybe an image of the Buddha or a teacher,
Yeah.
and so is there? I mean, why is it not? We look at a tree and there's we have the wisdom of emptiness, and
Well, I
mean,
mean, is your
is there
question why
some-
we
is it-
label, why we see a Buddha as a Buddha and we don't see the tree as a Buddha?
well, what I mean, it would seem to imply that there's something on the we put onto the basis the wisdom of a Buddha.
Well, what we would identify, use the words and the concept of wisdom of a Buddha to understand, and to communicate what a Buddha is doing. Buddha's doing it anyway, whether we call it something or not. So I don't know that you were directly asking this, but there's the criterion for, a valid labeling. I'd always thought that came from Chandrakirti, but Rinpoche said actually it comes from Tsongkhapa. It's in Lamrim Chemo. But the three criteria is that there is a convention. So there is a convention of a cell phone. So that's been agreed upon. It's not invalidated or contradicted by a mind that validly sees conventional phenomenon. So if I take my glasses off and I see a blur, that doesn't mean that this is a blur. So it's contradicted by a mind that validly, everybody else would say, hey, that's not a blur. It's a, it's this black rectangle. And and then the third criteria is that it's not contradicted by a mind that validly sees deepest truth. So that was this problem with the Svatantrika, saying that what establishes that it exists is that it can be seen. Well, also truly established existence, appears as well. Not that it can be seen, that it appears. Well, truly established existence, or something resembling it, because truly established existence doesn't exist, so it can't appear. But something resembling it appears, and a mind that, of a total absorption of an arya would say, well, hey, no, that's not correct. So if you look at that, that means that the validation of conventional phenomenon is all from the side of the mind, not from the side of the object. So that's why His Holiness always says that the Chittamatra is a stepping stone for understanding that if you understand first that the appearance of something is only established from the side of the mind, you can't say that it's coming from an object that exists before it's perceived. Like I was saying, well, how do you know that there's food in the refrigerator? You could only know that by either inference, which is the mind, or by actually looking at it. But not independently of the mind. So as a stepping stone, if you understand that the appearance of something is dependent on the mind, then you can go to the Madhyamaka, that its manner of existing, how you establish that it exists, is only coming from the side of the mind. So that just, reinforces the point that the tenet systems really need to be studied as stepping stones. So you had a question on this side?
Thank you. I have two questions from one of the paragraphs, and he got into compassion. And one is, I think I may have just missed this, but 3 kinds of compassion. I
Right.
didn't get that. And then just kind of tied to that was how independent or dependent arising, how that made the Buddha more compassionate, and he became a much more compassionate teacher because of his understanding, his realization of dependent arising.
Okay. Good question. The 3 types of compassion come from the introductory verses in Madhyamaka Avatara, engaging in Madhyamaka, Chandrakirti's work. And there, the 3 types of compassion are that you have compassion for others because they are suffering, so on a gross level, may they be free of suffering, etc. That type of compassion. Then there's the compassion that understands not just that they are suffering, but also that understands their impermanence, that, they're changing moment to moment, they're going to die, they have the suffering that's, affected with that their happiness doesn't last, that's going to change, it's impermanent. There are many levels of impermanence, and the fact that they're suffering because they don't understand impermanence. So there's that compassion, so that's the cause of their impermanence. That's the second. The first was because they suffer, because they're unhappy and have gross suffering. Second is in terms of impermanence, and the third is in terms of their voidness, that they don't understand that voidness, and that is causing all their problems. So you have compassion for them with the understanding that they themselves are not self-established, so the voidness of them, and that they don't understand voidness. So if you have that type, and that compassion is called the compassion which is not aimed at what I was speaking about yesterday, referent things, inherently existent things. But that's, I just explained it in more detail of what that's referring to. So a Buddha, in having that compassion, understands the voidness of them. So you have to have the understanding of voidness to have that compassion, that type of compassion.
When having compassion, for example, for humans, but animals too, insects, because they don't have independent existence, or because they don't know they have?
Because they don't know that voidness.
Oh,
because they don't understand voidness, therefore they, assume that everything is self-established, and then this is mine, and this is, don't touch it, and all of that. So they produce all their problems. But it's not just that they don't understand it, but in in someone's understanding who has this compassion, they understand the voidness of the persons and the voidness of their problems, etc. So it works. They don't understand it, but the person having the compassion understands it. They don't understand the impermanence, but the person that has that type of compassion understands their impermanence. Right? Somebody? Then Shane. Then, yeah.
Is that the same as is the number 3 you just mentioned the same
Yes.
as the non-referential compassion?
That's non-referential. That's another way of translating it.
Okay. So my question, I noticed you said the three ways of engagement of emptiness or voidness was to turn toward, or turn us toward it, descend toward, and descend upon. What is descend? How's that
It's the
relevant?
word to engage, literally. This is described in a very graphic way. So when you turn towards something, no, I'm just making this up, because I haven't heard, very graphic descriptions of this. So I'm just imagining what it would mean, that you turn toward it. Well, you've heard it, and you now can turn toward, thinking about it. And when you engage with it, then you are thinking about it, trying to understand what it is. And then the third one is that plop, you land on it. So now you have understood it, and you can meditate on it. So I could imagine correlating it with hearing, thinking, and meditating. But that's just a pure guess.
And then my last question was, and I think I just missed this, but the explicit versus implicit dependent origination.
I think that was referring to, either I don't think that Rinpoche used that term. I don't recall exactly, but it would be interpretable and definitive. That when you an interpretable and definitive is not really the translation of the Sanskrit words. The Sanskrit words mean what leads you to voidness and what you have been led to, which is voidness. That's literally the Tibetan terms for it. Not the Tibetan, the Sanskrit terms for it. So any teaching that you receive, if it's not explicitly, which means manifestly with the actual words about voidness, then it will be something that is intended to lead you toward that. So, for instance, when you study Abhidharma, and you have a whole, when they defined the Tripitaka, the baskets of the Abhidharma Sutra and Vinaya, that the Abhidharma one is to develop wisdom, discriminating awareness. So then you wonder, what in the world is that? How does that correlate with Abhidharma? Well, it's set theory. You have, here is a, when you study it, you have a list of, all the characteristics of this realm of, of the heavens. And then it says, and if you change one variable in that, then how many are there? And so it really develops your intelligence to try to figure out, now how many are there? And this and that. At least that was the way that I was taught it. And then you can see that for, in the monastic education system, it would perform that function. So it leads you to having the type of mind that could understand voidness. Yeah. Shane, you had a question?
You talked about the diluted belief in the perishing aggregates.
The what belief?
The diluted belief.
Right, in the perishing aggregates.
Mm.
Difficult term.
Yeah. Do you think that like a really firm understanding of death would be the antidote for that?
Well, that doesn't come immediately, that doesn't click for me that it would work like that. First of all, you have to understand the term and understand, the history of the term. Perishable aggregates, this is, there's the self and the aggregates, and then it's the projection of an Atman that is, non-static, that doesn't change, that is not affected by anything, that is not made of parts. So this is referring to the Samkhya philosophy, that it's not made of Rajas, Sattva, and Tamas, these three things, so it's partless, and that it is independent, so it's not tied to the aggregates. Another level is that in liberation it can exist without a body and mind, but on a more practical level it's not tied to it. So, and then, it comes in and it's either identical with one of the aggregates, that's one philosophy, and then the Indian philosophy, and the other is that it just, comes in and lives there and controls it, but it's not tied to it. So the way that this is taken in the commentaries is that perishable means that it is not static, so the aggregates are not static. And it is it's not the word for aggregates, it's the word for, it's kaya, the word which is when we talk about the three bodies of the Buddha or four bodies of a Buddha, body has to be understood like a body of literature, a corpus of literature. So it's a lot of bodies. Buddha can appear as a bridge or as, this or as that. So there's all these different things. So that is the word that is being used here, and that's referring to that the basis is very different from what's being, the Atman that's being projected on it. The basis is, perishing, so it's, from moment to moment, and it is made of parts. It's a collection of parts. So that's the derivation of how it is understood at a certain time. Vasubandhu basically took it like this. Before Vasubandhu, if you look at the actual Sanskrit word, it's not that. It's sat, kaya. Sat means existent. So in the earlier translations, even Vasubandhu's teacher takes it like that. So an existent Atman going into the aggregates. So but Vasubandhu interpreted it differently. Anyway, it's talking about the same thing. So I don't see the association of that necessarily with death. Yeah, next. Tamara.
Thank you, Alex. So Rinpoche explained today, he referenced a quote from Clear Words about...
can you move the microphone a little bit away? Yes.
Yeah. So Rinpoche explained today a quote from Clear Words where Acharya Chandrakirti said that for
Clear
me...
Words.
Yes.
Yeah.
Acharya Chandrakirti said, for me, the nature of fire is not heat. Can you explain this quote?
Oh, okay. The heat is, what is the essential nature? The essential nature of something is what makes it exist and function. There are these three terms that sometimes are all translated as nature, and that really then becomes confusing. They are different. One is, and I translate it as essential nature, and this is what was being referred to, and the self-nature, and the defining characteristic. So, now I really don't remember whether it was, he said, the ngo, the essential nature, or the rangshan, the defining nature. I think it was just, Simon just said nature, so it didn't differentiate that. But the essential nature of, what it... well, it could be understood both ways. So now I'm going into uncertain territory and explaining this. But heat is a characteristic of both fire and boiling water. So heat is not the defining, it doesn't have the defining characteristic of water or fire. It's a quality. So it doesn't have the essential nature of being water or of being fire. So that's fairly obvious. Pardon? A flame also, well, this is the heat. What was he, what, it was talking about the heat of a flame. The heat is not the flame.
Essential nature of
But each one would have the defining characteristic or the essential nature of being heat, and one would be of being fire. But this was getting to the point that and this was the self nature. It wasn't the essential nature. The self nature was something that makes it exist. The nature of it as an existent phenomenon, as having a, there's the difference between just being a knowable phenomenon and being a specific type of knowable phenomenon, with this or that. So just to be a phenomenon, that's the self-nature. And what makes a phenomenon that can function, Rinpoche said, it's the voidness of it. That's actually the self-nature. But things don't have a self-establishing nature that, establishes that, from its side, that it is an existent phenomenon. So that self-nature, so he's saying that, in terms of a self-nature, it doesn't, just because it's hot doesn't make it exist. So this could be going, now again, I'm guessing, that it produces an effect. So fire produces heat, boiling water produces heat, etc. Just because it produces an effect doesn't make it an existent phenomenon. That was what Vaibhashika and Sautrantika said as what establishes that something exists, performs a function. So that is not affected by anything, the voidness of it that allows for it to function is not affected by anything, it's just a fact about things, unlike the defining characteristic, which was something that is a convention that's made up by, a group of people at some time. So that was the difference. But I think, what it's talking about is the quality of something doesn't, that's not the thing itself.
And then Rinpoche was saying that the non-Gelupas were using this quote against the Gelupas?
Well, the so it must be self-nature, Rungshin. It must be Rungshin, the self-nature. Remember, everybody except Gelugpa says that things are established by a self-establishing nature. Self-establishing nature is, let's go back to our model of mental labeling and conceptual cognition. There is what something is and how it exists. So the implied object of what it is the mere conventional, thing that functions, and how it exists, well, that is just imaginary. It doesn't refer to anything real. Put it together and imagine that it actually has that, true existence or self-establishing existence, then it becomes a thing, a referent thing, and that doesn't refer to anything real. So now, when we talk about that way of existing, well, they would take that either as, specifically that self-nature. So that self-nature not being in terms of voidness, but a self-nature being a self-establishing nature, that there is something in it that makes it, that establishes it. Maybe that's not coming across clearly. They would say that the defining characteristic of the category is found in the basis. And that then establishes that it exists as this thing, and in terms of mental labeling, that it accounts for accurate mental labeling. Otherwise, you could label anything as anything. So it has to have, the basis has to have the defining characteristic. So they all will insist on that. And, based on that, then there is a referent thing, whether we're talking about the basis having the defining characteristic, or the basis having the self-nature, or the basis having the essential nature, that in reality that something has that. So they would all say that. They all accept self-established existence or inherent existence. And what is absent from that, what is devoid of that, that's why I say emptiness fits this thing, is that, for instance, it's truly established. Truly established means, in their definition, that it is established independently of conceptual labeling. That's the definition in Chittamatra and Svatantrika. For Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, truly existent means that it functions, performs a function. So it's a different definition. So it is self-established, it's inherently existent, and what it is devoid of is truly established existent. And that is a non-affirming negation. And in, the total absorption into voidness, the so-called meditative equipoise, or Jeffrey's term, nothing appears. So, they have valid meditation on voidness. It's not that it's a different type of meditation on voidness, it's just that they have not refuted enough. It's under refutation. Now, the over-refutation is when, it's said that, you can't divide, this is the non-galupas, that you can't separate out the conventional, the mere conventionality and the way of existing. You can't separate that out. You separate them so they're together. Because there's together, there are no conventional objects. It's just a mental fabrication. So that means that, for instance, we perceive pixels, or we perceive colored shapes, and actual conventional objects are put together mentally, conceptually, which makes perfect sense. And they say, nevertheless, things function. There is functionality. It's not that they are nihilist. Tsongkhapa in Lamrim Chenmo then says, well, you can't say that. That's self-contradictory. Nevertheless, this is the assertion. There are no conventional objects objectively. Nevertheless, everything functions. Which, if you think of it in terms of, nothing exists as a still photograph. So, it never stops so that you could never point to anything or find anything. So it's understandable that you would say that, well, it's just the still photographs are a conceptualization. That's why, even though Tsongkhapa refutes this view very strongly and very logically, nevertheless, it's not stupid. Not at all stupid. And the other difference that Rinpoche was pointing out, which is a significant difference, is that many of the non-Gelugpa systems will say that the voidness that's understood conceptually, which then has, the appearance that it's self-established, because conceptual is like that, well, it truly exists in this box, in this category, so it's, with substantially, it's truly in this box. They will say, well, that's not, that's not the real voidness. Non-conceptual voidness, well, that's not the same voidness, they would say. And they use the term beyond words, beyond concepts. That means non-conceptual. So even in the Lama Choba, it's influenced by this view. You have the verse, offering Dharmakaya, beyond words, beyond concepts. So that's this view. So first Panchen Lama was very non-sectarian. He wanted to bring harmony into the views. Okay, another question?
What you were just describing about the non-Gelugpa view, that there is something on the side of the object establishing it. That's
that's the non-Prasangika view.
That was what I was, my
that's
question.
That's the non-Prasangika, not the non-Gelugpa view.
Okay, can you then draw the distinction between the Svatantrika and the non-Gelugpa view? I guess that's it sounded similar to me.
First of all, the non-Gelugpas say that Svatantrika and Prasangika have the same view. The only difference is the type of logic that is used. So, but the same view that they share is not the view of Svatantrika. It's this view that I was just describing of conventional objects are a mental fabrication, conceptual fabrication. So that's not the same as saying that there's a container that is empty of, a self-established container that's empty of truly established existence. That's different. That's a misconception that often happens, that because they say Svatantrika and Prasangika have the same view, they think, well, then it's the Svatantrika view. It's not. Rinpoche is very unique in having studied Madhyamaka, both from a Gelugpa and a Nyingma teacher. That's rare. We have time maybe for one more question.
There's a question from Venerable Losang from online saying, can you speak of the importance of practices that prepare one to study emptiness, such as ethics, understanding karma?
Such as what?
Ethics,
yeah.
Understanding karma, and purification.
Mm-hmm.
He's asking you to speak on that.
Why they are preliminaries?
The importance of these preliminaries.
The importance of them. Ethics, karma,
purification, and so on.
And purification. Well, I mean, the three higher trainings, you need ethics to be able to restrain the body from destructive behavior, the the body and speech, and that gives you the strength to be able to, in concentration, to restrain the mind from mental wandering, from flightiness of mind and dullness. So it gives you the discipline to do that, and then with concentration, then you have the ability to stay focused on voidness. So I mean, that gives the preparation. The understanding of karma, well, as I have to explain karma. Let me see if I can do that briefly. The way that Nagarjuna accepts it, asserts it, which is a few centuries before Vasubandhu. And Vasubandhu has the same view. Karma is for an action of, first of all, karma does not mean action, so forget about that translation. That is really misleading. For a mind, an action of the mind, it is the mental factor of an urge. It is the mental factor that basically pokes the consciousness and the other mental factors to perform the functions and to go from moment to moment. And so it is the propeller of a thought. And the action of the mind, in terms of the 10 destructive or 10 constructive actions, is to think over and come to a decision to commit the action of one of the actions of body or speech. That's it, in terms of what the 3 destructive or 3 constructive actions of mind are in the list of 10. That's what they're talking about. Then the action of body or speech, in that act, so the karma for the action of the mind is just this mental factor that's pushing it. Then in the and then the pathway of that karmic impulse, that urge, is and it's not the same as intention. Intention is the mental factor of being intent on doing something, wishing to do it. I want to do this. And then, I want to think about it and decide whether to do it or not. It's coming, first you have a thought that arises from either past way of acting or far external influence or sickness. So the thought comes, I'm going to lie. I'm going to lie. Then you have to want to lie. So that's the wish, the intention. Then that urge is going to think over and decide, okay, yes, I'm going to lie, or no, I'm not going to lie. Then there's an interval, and then the action of the mind, the pathway of that, there's a basis, and there's the intention, and there's the disturbing emotion, and there's, the action of thinking, and there's the, has to get the result. All of that's the action. So then, in terms of the actual action of the body or speech, for the body, it's the motion of the arm, or the motion of whatever it is, as a method to make that action take place. In order to kill, the arm has to go like that, to punch somebody or pull a trigger or whatever. So that's part of the pathway. It is the implementation of a method to make the action occur. And in the and so that, just going along, it's an impulse, the motion of the body. Or with speech, it is the utterance of sounds of the alphabet, basically. So the utterance of syllables as a method to make the lie take place. How do you make a lie take? You have to say words. You have to say something. So that's the it's compulsive. That's the whole aspect of karma, that it's a compulsive thing based on habit. And that's what we want to get rid of, is the compulsiveness of our behavior. So then, as what comes from that is, what's left over, what's left as the result of that is a karmic potential, the so-called seed. So when we talk about the result not existing in the cause, sprout and seed are just an analogy for being able to understand it. What they're really talking about is, don't think that the result that of killing somebody is sitting inside the seed, waiting to it's fixed, it's determined, waiting to pop out. No, it changes from moment to moment. It is affected by circumstances, purification, all sorts of things. So it's not that the result is existing inside the cause already, and it's not that a result is just coming from external circumstances. I got sick just because of, the external things. In terms of the karmic effect. So cause and effect is karmic. Cause and effect is the main thing that is being discussed. And what happens to us, it's not existent already. It's not coming from nothing. It's not non-existent. I mean, all of the lines of reasoning fit with karma. So to understand how that operates, if you have all that, obviously it is very much involved with the understanding of voidness, to answer the question. And purification, if it's done really, I mean, we think, Vajrasattva, well, you just have to say the magic words 100,000 times and it's done. Well, it has to be with perfect, motivation, perfect concentration for all of them. That's not easy. That's not easy at all. Well, it's 6 o'clock, so we need to...
Yeah, we'll dedicate the merit.
Pardon?
Yeah, we can dedicate the merit.
We can dedicate the merit. So thank you very much.
Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Can't go without the commercial advertisement, which is, if you want more of this type of explanation, go to studybuddhism.com. There's that. There's also, we have a YouTube channel with interviews from now about 55 teachers from all the Tibetan traditions and Chinese traditions, Theravada, etc. So it's a large resource. So if you want more like this, that's where you go.